Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to wrap up everything that you've done with slope-intercept as far as constant rate of change and constant proportionality. We do know that constant proportionality, COP, means that it goes through the origin, and we know that the origin is 0, 0. And when it does that it all equals a proportional relationship. If it's a constant rate of change, that means that it crosses the y-axis at some point other than 0, 0. Crosses y-axis other than 0, 0. And it is non-proportional. And the way that we write those equations, a constant of proportionality would look like this. Y equals mx. Or sometimes it's k equals y over x. I don't know why it's called that. You can Google 500 million things. They'll give you 500 different answers. Okay, here's the expectation for today. You need to make sure that you have this review with you in front of you. We've already checked it to make sure that it is complete. Your job right now is to correct it. So I'm going to go through each one of these questions. You're going to make sure that you've got the right answers. The reason why I want you to have that is because I'm going to allow you to use this on your test tomorrow when you take it over take over this entire unit. So we're going to go through all of this together. So let's take a look at the first ones here. And I'm going to do mine in blue. So Jim has 2 marbles and he gets 4 marbles each month. Write an equation to represent this situation. So this goes back to the very beginning of the year whenever we wrote equations. So when you take a look at this equation says he gets 4 new marbles each month. We don't know how many months. He could get 4 marbles this month, 4 marbles next month. It could be 6 months, 12 months, whatever. So we know that this is going to be my M and that's going to be my X. He already has 2 marbles, so that is going to be my B. So when I write my equation that should look like this, y equals mx plus b, this equation would be y equals 4x plus 2. Not any math involved at all. You're just looking at the equation and looking at the word problem and figuring out what it is. So now we're going to take that information and we're going to put it in the table. So if he has 1 month, how many marbles will he have? So y equals 4 times 1 plus 2. So 4 times 1 is 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. So he should have 6 marbles. Y equals 4 times 2 plus 2, because it's the same equation. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 plus 2 is 10. Y equals 4 times 3 plus 2. So 4 times 3 is 12 plus 2 is 14. So if you look at this rate of change is 4. This rate of change is 4. These are all 1. And so your change in y over your change in x is 4 over 1. And if you look at your equation that you wrote based on what you were told, you can see that this and this match. So you know that you've got your equation right. If you want to check your B, you know that if I didn't do any, 4 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 2 is 2. So that's what those two numbers are, and that's how that connects. So in order to receive credit and for me to give you extra points on your test, this is what I'm looking for. Make sure you've got this. Pause the video, whatever you need to do. Just make sure you've got this information. It will help you. Okay, so now we've got to graph it. So what we've got here is we've got our x-axis and we've got our y-axis. So let's use these coordinates. If I did 0, I've got 2. if I've got 1, I've got 6. So over 1, up 6. Over 2, up 10. Over 3, up 14. When I connect those lines, I have a non-proportional line because it's got a plus 2. It crosses the y-axis at 2. It does not cross at 0, 0. So there you go. All right, let's look at number 2. Number 2 says to write an equation from the table. So to write an equation, change in y over the change in x. Let's look at what's happening on the y. From 4 to 2, we are subtracting 2. From 2 to 0, we are subtracting 2, and so on and so on. From negative 3 to negative 2, we are adding 1. We are adding 1. We are adding 1. So the change in y is 2, and the change in x is 1. But the 2 is negative. So this is my m, because we know that slope, change in y over change in x, is the m. We also know that the b, when x equals 0, y is that number. So where is x 0? X is 0 right here. So my b is negative 2. So now I have enough to write my equation, y equals mx plus b. Put in my numbers. The m is negative 2 over 1 or 2. It doesn't matter. And my y is negative 2. So there's my equation. All right, the next one. Same thing, write an equation from a table. Let's look at what's happening. So the change in y over the change in x. Y is decreasing by 2, decreasing by 2, decreasing by 2. So we know this is going to be a negative slope. The x's are negative 3 to negative 1. It is adding 2. Negative 1 to positive 1. We're adding 2, adding 2. So our change in y over our change in x is negative 2 over positive 2, which is a negative 1, because 2 divided by 2 is 1, and one of those numbers is negative. So this is our m. So now our b, when x equals 0, our b is our number. Well, we don't have a 0 on our table, so we have to find that number. So what is the number that goes right in here? This is where 0 would be. And if that's the case, then I need to go over here and find out, okay, what is this number when x is 0? So if this is decreasing by 2, well, from 0 to the next number is going to be what? It's going from 2 to 0, so it's subtracting 2. Now we're going to subtract 1 to get the 0. So our b is 0. So what this tells us is that this is a proportional line. The number that is in between here, this is a 0 right here. And when you subtract 0 minus 1, because there's two numbers in between, you're going to get a 1 in between. And we can write that out like this just to kind of help you. I'll do it over here. So you've got 2 minus 2, which equals 0. Then you've got 0 minus 2, which is negative 2. And that's what we've got right here. So the number in between there is a negative 1. So we've got a negative 1. It's not proportional, sorry. Negative 1. So your equation is y equals mx plus b, which equals y equals negative, why is my pen not working? Negative 1x minus 1. All right, Number 4, I'm going to erase this stuff over here. And number 4, we'll do a different color. We'll do black. So number 4, same type of thing. We're trying to find the change in y over the change in x to find our m. So what's happening with the y from 5 to -4, we are adding 1, we are adding 1, we are adding 1. From 3 to 0, we are adding 3, we are adding 3, we are adding 3. So my change in y is 1. I'm not sure why my pen is kind of being goofy. So it's a positive 1 over 3. So that is our m. Then when our b is when x equals 0, our y is what? Well, in this case, it did give you the x is 0. So x is 0 and y is -4. So your equation is y equals mx plus b. So it's going to be y equals 1/3 minus 4. And remember, in order to receive credit, you have to have that y equals. If you just put 1/3 x minus 4, it's wrong. It's not describing anything, and that's just not what you're supposed to be doing. All right, number 5. Number 5 we'll do in yellow. Change in y over our change in x. We are subtracting 1 each time. And then up here, we are adding 2 each time. So we know this is going to be a negative slope because it's got a negative number. So my m is -1/2. So I've got y equals -1/2 x. And then when x is 0, which we don't have here, so we're going to have to subtract. So this is increasing by 2. So what plus 2 equals 2? Well, 0 does. So the next number here is 0. Well, this is decreasing by 1. So if it's decreasing by 1, what minus 1 is going to give me 1? Well, 2 minus 1 is going to give me 1. So that means my b is a positive 2. All right. So make sure you've got this information. You know, it's a lot, but you're going to need this because you are going to have to be able to find these numbers because sometimes we will not give them to you in the equations. All right, let's go to number 6. And number 6, these seem to be the easiest for you guys because all you got to do is plug in the number. So y equals 2 times 0, y equals 2 times 2, y equals 2 times 4, y equals 2 times 6. So 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 4 is 8, and 2 times 6 is 12. Maybe if I can write it in there. That's it. Next thing, we'll go to this next one. -3 times 5 plus 2, -3 times 5 plus 2, -3, -3 times 6 plus 2, -3 times 7 plus 2, -3 times 8 plus 2. So all I did was I just plugged in those numbers that I have for x. So now all I've got to do is solve it. 3 times 5 is 15. Well, -15 plus 2 is going to give you -13. -3 times 6 is -18. So -18 plus 2 is going to give you -16. 3 times 7 is 21, which is negative. -21 plus 2 is -19. -3 times 8 is going to give you -24. Negative 24 times 2 is going to give you negative 48. I'm sorry, not times 2. Negative 3 times 8 is 20, 24, negative, and then you're going to add 2 to it, and it's going to be negative 22. So if you look at what's happening here, 13 to 16, we're adding 3 each time. Adding 3, and these numbers are adding, we're subtracting 3, and these numbers are adding 1. So the change in y over change in x is a negative 3. So now you can check yourself with your formula. Last one, we've got negative 2. So we've got 1/2 times 2 minus 2, 1/2 times 0 minus 2, 1/2 times 2 minus 2, and 1/2. Sorry about that. Sorry about the breathing and stuff. It's 1/2 times 4 minus 2. All right. Don't let fractions freak you out. Half of something is just half of that number. If you've got 2, what is half of 2? Half of 2 is 1. So half of 2 is 1, and 1 minus 2 is negative 1. Half of 0 is 0. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. Half of 2 is 1, and then 1 minus 2 is negative 1. And you probably have already figured out my error that I did. Well, half of 4 is 2, and 2 minus 2 is 2. Okay, so if you look back up here where I did my first one, I forgot that this was a negative. This is negative 2. So half of negative 2 is going to be negative 1. Negative 1 minus 2 is going to be a negative 3. So negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, and then a positive 2. So we've done something wrong here. So let's take a look at what we've done. Half of 2 is 2. And half of 2 is 1. And it's a negative. Negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3. Half of 0 is 0. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. Half of 2 is 1. 1 minus 2 is going to be a negative 1. Half of 4 is 2, and 2 minus 2 is 2. So actually we did do this right. Although it's not a perfect line because the numbers don't come up to a perfect line. All right, the next one, number 9 here. All right, so I've given you values for x's. Now you just have to plug in the numbers for y. So when y equals 5 times negative 4, that is negative 20. When y equals negative 5 times negative 2, that's negative 10. When y equals 0, 5 times 0, that's going to be 0. When y equals 5 times 2, that's going to give me 10. When you look at this, it is increasing by 10 each time. And when you look at this, it is increasing by 2. So if we were to find the change in y over the change in x, the y is changing by 10, the x is changing by 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And that's what that number is. That's how it all connects. Okay, now we're going to make graphs from each one of these equations. This should be the easiest thing that you do, because when there is no b, then it crosses at the origin. Okay, so if there is no b, So if the equation looks like this, then it's going to cross at 0, 0. If the equation looks like this, it's going to cross the y-axis here. And that's where you start. So let's take a look at this. We're going to look at the first question. The first question says y equals 2x. There is no b. So that means that we are going to start at 0, 0. So we're going to start at 0, 0 because there's no b. And the slope is positive 2. Well, we know that slope is always written and constant rate of change is always written as a fraction. So that your slope is going to be 2 over 1. And so you're going to rise by 2 and you're going to run by 1. So you're going to go up 2 and over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. Then you're going to connect those dots. There you go. All right, let's look at this next one. And you can tell it's a positive slope because it's a positive 2. This next equation right here has a negative. It's a negative 3. So my slope is going to be negative 3 over 1. So that means I'm going to sink by 3. And so I'm going to go down by 3. And I'm going to swim by 1. So there's that. And then my b is where I start. Well, my b is a positive 2. That's my b. So I'm going to go start at positive 2. Put my dot there because that's where I'm going to put my coordinate there because that's where I'm going to start. And then I'm going to use my slope. It says that I need to go down 3. 1, 2, 3. I need to sink 3 and go over 1. I need to sink 3, go over 1, and so on and so on. So there's my line. I hope this is making a little more sense now that you guys have been working on this for a while. Okay, let's look at this next one. Okay, so my slope, there's no number in front of the x, so that means my slope is 1 over 1, which is super simple because you're just going to be going up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. It's a positive number, so that's going to be your rise. So you're going to go up, and then you're going to run by 1. Then this is your b, and that's where you start. So let's start there. Let's go find positive 5. Positive 5 on this here, and I can barely read this, but I think that it's right here. I think that's a 5. We're going to pretend that's a 5. And it says I'm going to go up 1 over 1. So up 1 over 1. Well, I don't have enough room on my graph, so I need to go backwards so that way I can finish filling out my graph. And there's my line. It's a positive slope because the number 1 over 1 is positive. All right, number 13. Number 13 is going to be negative, so my slope is going to go that direction. So let's look at what the slope is. Slope is going to be sink and swim because it's negative. So I'm going to go down and over, but I'm going to go down by negative 1 and over by 2. Then I'm going to start here. That's my b. So let's go find negative 2 on the y-axis. Here it is. My slope says to go sink 1 and swim 2. So I'm going to go down 1 and over 2. Down 1 and over 2. Down 1 and over 2. And I'm just going to keep going. And there's my line. Like I said, hopefully this is making more sense. All right, these last little bitty ones here. Okay, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Now we're taking what we've learned and what we know about an equation and how they work, and we're going to write an equation based on the graph that we're looking at. So we know that we have to start at the y-axis. So that is our b. If this pen would write, that would be fantastic. Well, when you look at this, first graph here, it starts right here, which is a -4. So there's your B. All you got to do is know that that letter means that that's where you start. So there's your B. And then your M is your rise over run, or your sink or swim. Well, in this case, this is positive because it's going up. And so we're going to find this other point here, and we're going to go from where we started, and it looks like we're going to rise by 1, and then we're going to run by 1, 2, 3, 4. So now you've got your M and now you've got your B. So your equation is y equals 1/4 x minus 4. All right, number 15. This is going to be a negative slope. So you know that you're going to need to sink and swim. So you're going to go down and you're going to go that way. Where do we start? We're going to start at the y-axis. And it starts at a +1. So my B is a +1. And then we need to get to this point. Well, I told you we got to sink and swim. So we're going to sink and then we're going to swim. We're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to go down 4, which is negative. And then we're going to go over 1, 2, 3. Down 4 and over 3. So that's my slope. That's my M. So my equation is y equals -4 over 3x plus, where did we start? We started at +1. It's all about understanding the pieces and what goes with what. So there's really not a lot of math that's involved in this. All right, let's look at number 16. Let's use a different color. We know that this is going to be a negative slope, so we're going to have to sink and swim. So we're going to go down and over. So we're going to go down and we're going to go over. That's going to be our M. And then we need to figure out, where do we start? Y-axis. And we're starting at, I believe that is a 2. And let's go from this point to this point. So let's start here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to go down 6. And then we're going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's our M. So y equals -6 over 5x. And then our B was a +2. All right, number 17. We're going through this pretty fast, so if you need to go back through and retake some notes, please do. Make sure you have this. Like I said on your test on Friday, I will use this to give you some extra points, whether it be extra credit, or maybe I might decide to fix an assignment that you have not completed. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it, but if you've taken the time to write down everything that I've done and that you have finished it and you turn it in and you do what you're supposed to do, then I'm totally fine with you using it on your notes, and I'm totally fine with giving you some kind of credit. So let's look at this. This is a positive slope, so we know we have to rise and run. And if you forget positive and negative, go look at that picture of the slope man that you were supposed to copy in your journal. That slope man, as he's going up a hill, he's being positive. He's decided, I'm going to go work out, I'm going to walk up that hill, and I'm going to do better. And that's positive. It also means that business may be increasing profits. Things might be going well for them. You might have more money in the bank. That's what a line that goes up means. A line that's going down means this poor guy got to the very top of the hill, he got too tired and he fell and he rolled down the hill. That's not a positive experience. It's a horrible experience. It's negative. That's why we call that negative. Also, if you're losing money as a business, typically the way that that is shown on a line graph is that the line is going down, showing that you are losing money. So that's a good way for you to remember that. Anyway, this is positive that you're going to rise and we're going to run. So we're going to rise and then run, and then we're going to find what our B is. That's where we're going to start. And we're starting right here. And I'm hoping I'm reading this right because I can't really see it very well, but I believe that is a positive 1. We're going to go with positive 1. If it's a different number on yours, then you can see better, but I believe it's a positive 1. So that's our B. We're going to rise, and then we're going to run. So let's find another point. Well, they didn't give us a point over here. They gave us a point over here. So let's find out from here, how do we get from this point to this point? We're going to go up 1, up 2. So we're going up 2, and we're going to go over 1, 2, 3. So we're going to rise by 2 and over by 3. And if you were to do that here, you would go up 2, 1, 2, and then over 3, 1, 2, 3, and you're on the line. So whatever direction you go, you're still going to be rising and running. Sometimes you might have to go backwards, but you're still going by the same number. So your y equals 2/3 x plus 1. Just make sure you're paying attention to your fraction. Some students want to flip that fraction around, and some students want to change it back to a mixed number. Do not change it to a mixed number whenever you're doing slope of a line. It makes absolutely no sense, and it's also extra work for you. Don't do it. All right, let's look at number 18. Number 18. The information on this table shows that there's a relationship between the number of hours that Julio traveled and how many miles he went. What is the constant of proportionality? So what we've kind of done is we've given you this word problem that's got a lot of information in it, and however, it's a real world situation, a real world example. You do this whenever you want to try to plan a trip. Okay, how long is it going to take me to get from here to there? When you go on family vacations and you're going to Colorado or going somewhere here and they're traveling in a car, they don't just get in a car and say, hey, we got to go and we're going to go be here this time. There's certain times that people need to be at certain places. Hotels are an example. Hotels will charge you a fee if you don't arrive by a certain time. So if you're traveling in a car and you're supposed to be there by 4 o'clock and you don't get there till 10 o'clock at night, they will charge you for that time because you had made a commitment to be there by a certain time. So you want to make sure that you understand how time works. Most of the time you do this in your head. So that's why we use MapQuest. That's why we use all these other things. But this is how it works. You need to know how it works because you guys are going to be the ones that are going to be putting together these computers and things as we get in, as we, meaning me, get older, and we have to rely on you guys to give us the good information and understand the background behind it. So anyway, this guy is traveling at a constant of proportionality. So if this is proportional, he is going to be, this is your equation. Anytime it's constant of proportionality, this is what your equation is going to look like. So it says, what is his constant of proportionality? Well, let's look. Okay, if he goes from 4 to 5 hours, that's 1. From 5 to 7, that's 2. From 7 to 10, that's 3. So we all know that there are numbers that are between 2 and 3. So we've got to figure out what that number is. That means that between 4 and 5, there's a number. Then there's a 6. Then there's a 7. Then there's an 8. And then there's a 9. So then we look at this side. So let's take a look at what's happening there. So 325 minus 260 is going to be 65. So he traveled 65 miles in 1 hour between hours 4 and 5. So let's add another 65 for 6 hours. That would make 6 hours 130. Well, we know that if we add another 65, we're going to get so 325 plus 130 is 455. So that's where he's at 7 hours. Where is he at 8 hours? Well, let's add the 65. So that brings that up to 520. That's for 8 hours. Then another 65. That's for 8 hours or 9 hours. It's 585. 585. So I'm going to write this here. 7 hours was 455. 8 hours was 500. Let's do 455 plus 65. Oops, not 29,000. 455 plus 65 is 520. Plus 65 is 580. So that's 9 hours. And then we know that 10 hours plus another 65 is 650. So just because it looks like there's not a constant rate of change, you need to kind of look to see what are those numbers that are in between, especially in a situation like this where we've got numbers missing between 7 and 10. And they've also already told you that there's a constant of proportionality. So this guy is traveling at 65 miles an hour every hour, and we're trying to determine how far he's going to get in so many hours. And so the question is, how far is he going to go in 10 hours? So after we've added all this up, we've figured out that he will go 650 miles. That's it. The constant of proportionality is the change in y over the change in x. So he has 65 over 1. He goes 65 miles every hour. So just because numbers are missing here, you have to pay attention to that. I can guarantee you on your test, you have 2 questions where I have purposely left out numbers that you're going to have to figure out. So make sure that you find what those missing numbers are and just use your basic addition. So your equation is y equals 65x. He's going to go 65 miles every hour. And if we were to plug that in, 65 times 10, we get 650. And that's how many miles we got here, and that's how many miles we got here. All right, last question. Last question says, what is the constant of proportionality for this graph? Well, you can already tell that it goes through 0, 0. So that means its constant of proportionality, it's going to look like this. It's not going to have a b. We're not going to start anywhere else on the y-axis. So we know that. We also know that it's positive because it's going uphill. This person is going uphill. We're making money. Everything is positive. So we need to find out, how do we get from here to here? Rise over run. How far am I going to rise? How far am I going to run? I'm going to go up 1, and I'm going to go over 2. There's my m. So my equation is y equals mx. Y equals 1/2 x. And that's it, my friends. So make sure that you have got all this information down, that you've copied it all down. You've got it ready for yourself. This is what you're going to use on your test on Friday. I know it's a lot of information. Go back through if you need to. This covers everything that you need to know about slope, intercept, and how it works. And remember, we do not use the word slope in 7th grade. It is slope. And in 7th grade, we call it constant rate of change, and we call it constant of proportionality, and we call it unit rate. We call it that because that's what's happening. Things are moving at a constant rate of a speed, whether it be 60 miles an hour, whether I be making $5 an hour, Or if I have 2 apples and I paid $2 for it, and if I buy 4 apples, now I've got $4 that I've paid for it. That's what we mean by constant. Slope actually means how steep that slope is, whether it's a 90 degree or a 70 degree or a 40 degree. That's what slope actually means. But when it's all encompassed, it all means the exact same thing. So when you get to 8th grade and you say, oh, we learned about slope in 7th grade, I'm going to completely deny that I ever taught you slope, because we did not teach you slope. We taught you constant rate of change, and we taught you constant proportionality. 8th grade teachers will teach you what slope actually means. And I think that's it. Make sure you get this in your journal and have it ready for Friday.